I want to talk with you about dangerous ideas. Now, that might seem like a strange topic for me. If you've been reading the things that I've been writing for the last 8 years, you might think that there's nothing dangerous about what I write. I write about family and love and freedom and things like that. So why do I say that they're dangerous ideas? Well, what is a dangerous idea? A dangerous idea is anything that threatens the orthodoxy of a mainstream society. And the things that I have been talking with you about go directly opposed to what our society has taught you all of your life. Most people are indoctrinated from the very beginning, at home and in school, in some very fundamental ideas. And much of what I write about goes directly in opposition to those ideas. A dangerous idea is necessary, though, or various dangerous ideas are necessary in any society, because a great idea never takes over in a society until it goes through the period of being dangerous in the beginning, and then eventually it's accepted. So, what are these 8 dangerous ideas that I have been talking with you about? Let's get started. First, the way you do romantic relationships is killing you. Now, that might seem like a strange thing to start with, to put number 1 on my list, but I think it is a terribly important idea simply because unless your relationship is right, your relationships in general, but specifically the most important romantic relationship in your life, your partner, unless that is right, nothing else is right. Now, some people would say, well, this doesn't apply to me. I don't want a romantic partner. I don't have one. I don't intend to have one. Or maybe I have a terrible romantic partner in my life. It's okay anyway. If that's the way you feel, that's fine. I think you're mistaken. And I'm telling you that it is super, super important. It's a lot more important than you might realize. And that's something that I've been explaining over and over and over again. And I know from the things that I hear from you that many of you feel the same way. And you are desperately driven to have love. You're desperately driven to have understanding and all of the things that most of us at least normally want. And most people don't have those things. You have been taught by your family, by your friends, by people around you, by society in general, by popular culture, movies, television, music, everything else. You have been taught what to expect in a relationship. You have been taught how to choose somebody. You have been taught all sorts of things about what your relationship ought to be. You've been taught what to accept. And most of what you've been taught is a lie. It's wrong. And most of the relationships around me, most of the marriages around me bear that out. And that's why so many people are miserable. And that's why so many people are doing the rest of their lives wrong too. So what's the second thing? Second, you are destroying your family by making economic gain your highest goal. Now, I know a lot of people might say to me, but David, you don't understand. I work 80 hours a week, or I'm away from my family all the time because, it's for them. I'm doing this for them. I spend all my time somewhere else in order to make a lot of money, to give them security, blah, 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 whatever you want to say. I hear things like this all the time. The truth is that people lie to themselves. People have accepted the notion that they have to have certain success, they have to have certain markers of success, they have to have certain wealth in order for them to feel good about themselves. And many of those people lie to themselves and say that it's all about their families, and it's not. The truth of the matter is, even if you say you're doing something for your spouse or for your children, if you are taking your time away from them, you're ruining your relationship and you're hurting your children, whether they know it or not. even if you can't admit it to yourself. Okay, what's next? The third thing is that traditional ideas about children lead to dysfunctional and depressed adults. Now, this one is very personal to me, of course, because I have seen exactly what it does to be raised in an environment where, in my case, there was narcissism going on. There were other issues. I've talked about this a lot. But even if it's not something that is as dangerous as what I was raised in, even if it's not that sort of abuse, much of what we consider to be traditional child rearing ends up being abuse that causes long-term problems for children. If you don't understand that, as I didn't for a long time, I've told you this before, I grew up believing that these traditional ideas were great, even though I see differently now. If you don't see this, you are going to end up having very good intentions, but causing serious problems with your child in the long term and causing long-term problems for your relationships. I can give you references to studies which show all sorts of things like this. We've talked about this before. I'm not trying to tell the whole story right now, but this is something I'm really passionate about, of course, because it's something that I've gone through. Okay, what's next? The next thing is that the modern school system is the wrong way to become educated. Now, most people don't understand the fact that what we consider to be the modern school system actually grew out of the Prussian school system. What we have and consider to be, obvious traditional school didn't exist until a couple of hundred years ago. Now, many people would say, oh, well, that's because people didn't care about their children. People were not educated. You know what? A lot of people became very educated before schools ever existed. There's nothing wrong with teachers. There's nothing wrong with getting together to have classes, at times in certain specific things. But there are better ways to educate your children, and it starts at home. Unfortunately, today, school has become pretty much the de facto babysitter for children as they grow up. It has become the way parents dump their children somewhere so that they don't have to take care of them all the time. And then the schools raise their children and their peers teach them the attitudes that they end up believing. And that's leading to awful things. A lot of us just think that goes on, or a lot of people, I don't feel that way, but a lot of people believe, well, this is just something that goes on in bad schools. In good schools, well, it's totally different. The truth of the matter is the peer pressure and the just being a part of a group train children to be something which you don't want them to be, and you don't know that until it's too late to do anything about it. This happens even in the most affluent schools, the best schools, the schools that win the awards, any of them. It's the system that's a problem. Education needs to start at home. For me, the unschooling system would have been the best. I think that it's the smartest way for most children. I'm not going to tell you that classes aren't good for some things. There are some things that, I'd like to put a child in a class to learn this particular thing. But as far as just having a system by which children are taken and put into essentially a big warehouse every day where somebody else is raising them, somebody else is teaching them what to do and be, we are ruining children, and they are not very educated today. They're learning less and less. So the system does not work the way it was intended, and it's having terrible negative consequences. It's a bad system, and we need to accept that. Next, this is a terribly dangerous idea to a lot of people. Society has no right to give orders to individuals or to take the money that they earn. This seems like a terribly radical idea to most people because most people grow up being taught, as I grew up believing this, that we have a responsibility to obey the government. The government, they're good people, and they have the moral right to control us. They have the moral right to take from us what we earn in order to pay for what they want. This is a horrible idea. And if you ever start thinking of yourself as a consumer, as somebody who is buying services from a government, you'll start to realize how nutty this idea is. If somebody said you have to buy from this particular grocery store and you're going to get what we tell you, we're going to take some of your income and we're going to give you the groceries or the food that we want you to have, you would say, well, of course not. That's a nutty idea. I'm not going to accept whatever you happen to choose for me. But you do that with everything else in your life because you have been brainwashed to believe that this is the only way it can be. There are other ways to handle this, and we do not have the moral responsibility to obey some magical majority of the people, and we don't owe those people whatever of our money they want to take from us. It would be theft if your next door neighbor came over and took some of your money. It doesn't stop being theft just because a majority of the neighborhood come and take it from you. Honest. So what's next? Every relationship between humans needs to be voluntary. Too many people have accepted that you can be forced to do certain things. You can be forced to obey government. You can be forced to obey whatever teacher happens to be put in charge of the classroom where your child is put. Every relationship that we have ought to be voluntary. We know that a romantic relationship between two people ought to be voluntary, and if it's not, well, we say that there's something dysfunctional about it. We say that this, that it's a terrible relationship and somebody is controlling somebody else. If you have any relationship in which you don't have a choice, that relationship is wrong. You have the option in every relationship you're in, whether to obey or not, whether to stay or not. Every relationship ought to be voluntary. And if you accept that principle, that starts changing a lot of things, not only in your personal life, but especially in your relationship to what we call government. Next, more than ever, we need communities, such as churches, where we belong. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to be a part of a church. I don't, you might not be religious. You might not believe what I believe. Your faith might be different from mine. You might be Jewish. You might be atheist. I don't know. But churches and other religious institutions have traditionally played a role in giving people a place where they belong. Churches, synagogues, whatever, throughout human history. Our society used to be one that was based on, small groups of people interacting with one another. That is how we know how to live best. Well, our society is one in which we increasingly deal with people all over the world. We go, we go all sorts of places. We work away from home. Because of all of this, it's more important than ever that we have a place to come back to and feel as though this is our community. Now, for me, as a Christian, a church serves that purpose. For some people, it might be some other sort of religious body. For some other people, it might be some other kind of civic body. But everybody needs something to feel a part of, something to feel as though this is where I am at home. We all need this today more than ever. And next, most people will be happier and healthier with a simple lifestyle. You and I have grown up in a society where we have been taught that we constantly need more. We need a better car. We need a better house. We need fancier whatever. We are taught that we are nothing unless we meet the material standards of the society around us. We are taught that unless we act the way the people in movies do, the way people on television do, unless we act as our friends do, who have also been taught by the same sorts of cultural norms, that we are wrong, that we have not arrived. The truth of the matter is, if we would live in simpler ways, cutting back on the work that we do, cutting back on the amount of time that we spend away from one another, if we would spend more time in community, in simpler living, most of us would be far happier. I know I would, and I suspect you would be too. So there you have it. 8 dangerous ideas that I'm preaching to you. This is the gospel that I'm preaching. Do you know what the word gospel means? It just means good news. The gospel of the Christian religion is just the good news about Jesus. The gospel of these dangerous ideas is that there is another way to live. I think it's very good news that there are alternatives to what we have been taught. I believe that this will give us lives that we want. Even if we don't know that there's something wrong, I believe that there are things that we can do and be that are so much better than what we have right now. But more people need to hear these ideas. More people need to hear these dangerous ideas. Very few of them are going to, read what I have to write here. Very few of them are going to listen to this. So, what can I do about it? Well, that's what I'm going to talk with you about next time, when I talk about the art of dangerous ideas. So for today, thanks for listening.